What's up, guys? I am here this week to talk about Unit 26, Session 3 of the Gospel Project. I hope that these lessons have been helpful to you guys and encouraging to you. This week we're talking about one of the most important and significant things that we get to participate in as believers. We are talking about the Lord's Supper. We're talking specifically about the initial Last Supper where Jesus is sharing the bread and the wine with the disciples. And for us, as Southern Baptists, we believe that the Lord's Supper is symbolic, but we also believe that it is unique and special, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. What I want to talk about first, though, is I want to share just a quick story with you about something that happened during my ministry, early on in my ministry at a church. Probably about 17 years ago. I was serving on this church staff, and there were only 3 of us. And so anytime we did something really big, the entire staff would have to help be a part of it. And so we did the Lord's Supper one time. And I remember we were going to do it a little bit different. You know, we typically, just like every other church, we would pass out the bread, pass out the juice, and everybody would, take it and eat it and drink it. And that's usually how it would go. But this one particular Easter, we decided we were going to do something a little bit different. We were going to do a different type of presentation of the Lord's Supper. What we did for this particular time was we encouraged people to come up to the front of the sanctuary, up to the altar area, and one staff member was holding a tray that had bread on it. And one staff member was holding a goblet, which is what they told me it was called. It was a big cup, but a goblet that had juice in it. And what people were supposed to do is they were supposed to walk by, they were supposed to tear off a piece of the bread, they were supposed to dip it in the juice, and then they were supposed to eat it all at one time and pray as they went through. We had little phrases that we were supposed to say to them. It was, this is my body broken for you. Jesus says, this is my body broken for you. Jesus says, this is my blood shed for you. And so it was very special. It was a really cool way to do it. But there was this one guy who came through, and this story, you need to understand, it was funny. It was also kind of sad when you knew the circumstances, but it ended up being very sweet. I'll explain what I mean. So this guy comes through, all right? And he's an adult. He walks through and he can't figure out the order to do things. He can't get it. He can't process it. Now the sad part of this is that he had an illness that was keeping him from processing everything and getting everything in order. So you felt bad for him, but it was humorous. He thought it was funny. He couldn't help it. So he would come through and he would grab the bread and he would immediately eat it. And then he would get to the goblet and he would try to take it from me so that he could drink out of it. Now, obviously, this was not in a pandemic, but still, nobody wants somebody else's germs all over the cup. They don't want you taking a big swig, right? So he did this probably half a dozen times. He just could not get it. He would take it, he would eat it, he'd get to me, and I would fight him for the cup. And I'd say, no, you have to go back and do it again. So he'd go back, he'd grab the bread, he'd eat it, he'd come up and grab the cup, and I'm like, no, you got to go back and do it again. And finally, he figured it out. And so, like I said, it was funny. It was also sad just knowing that he couldn't help it. There was nothing he can do to do it better, to do it right. But there was also a certain sweetness to it. And here's where the sweetness comes in and how it applies to us. There was a beauty in the fact that he wanted to take the Lord's Supper so badly. It was frustrating to him after the laughter ended for him. It was frustrating that he couldn't do it right. Like he wanted it to be special. He wanted it to be a part of it. Now, a lot of us, I'm sure, if we were in circumstances where we knew we were going to struggle to do things in a certain order, we were really struggling mentally, we would be embarrassed and maybe not even participate. But for this guy, he wanted so badly to have the Lord's Supper. Why? And that's really what you guys are going to be talking about today, is what makes the Lord's Supper so special, what makes it so unique, what makes it such a big deal. And I would argue for all of us today that what makes it a big deal is not only that we do it in remembrance of Jesus. We do it to recognize that he did live a perfect life, that he did die on a cross for our sins, and that he did shed his blood for us so that our sins could be forgiven, and that he was resurrected. It's not just to remember, it's also to look forward. It's to look forward to the time when Jesus would come back for his church. And that day is coming. And so we just recently participated in the Lord's Supper here at church. I hope that was a special time for you. And I want to really stress and encourage you guys that in the future, when we do participate in the Lord's Supper, and don't do it in your life groups, but when we do this in a worship service, I hope and trust that you guys will focus your minds and hearts on the significance of what Jesus has done and what Jesus is going to do. I hope you guys have a great life group today. I love you guys, and I will see you soon.